Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Today I wanted to talk about item price histories, and more specifically in relation to the prices around 10 years ago today. As of recording it, this is February 21st of 2019. We're going to look back 10 years at 2009 around the February time and compare item prices now and then. Now the 2008-2009 era of RuneScape is one that is cherished by a lot of people, so we're going to have a look at what their economy looks like in relation to old school RuneScapes. Now there are going to be quite a few different factors affecting these items. One is just straight up inflation. Now it's hard to say which game had more gold inflation in it, but I would hazard a guess at old school RuneScape because there are quite a few updates in old school RuneScape that generate a lot of gold that weren't a thing back in 2009. Also, we just have generally divergent games. Old school RuneScape has a bunch of different updates that the 2009 game didn't have, and actually the 2009 game will have some updates that old school RuneScape won't have. Those divergences will cause different prices in items as well. There will be differences of opinion on what actually caused these prices to change so much. Just one man's opinion, so if you have your own, definitely leave a comment down below and I would love to read it. I hope that didn't sound too sarcastic. Well, too late, let's move on. Okay, the first item I want to have a look at here is the Dragon Chain Body. So back in 2009, the Dragon Chain Body was worth around 5 mil, more or less. Now around the 2006-2007 era, the Dragon Chain Body was seen as the best non-degrading armor, and even after the release of Barrows, it did not crash in price that much. However, later we saw the release of Bandos and finally the Dragon Plate Body, which really shot the price down to the 4 or 5 mil mark, which we can see here in 2009. Now in relation in the current game, the price is only 968k, and you might be wondering what is the difference here? Well, interestingly, there isn't a huge difference. Dragon Chain Bodies aren't being added into the game in a different way. They're still an extremely rare item that is only obtainable on a few different drop tables, and on those they're extremely rare. However, my guess is just the general trend in today's game of valuing strength boosting gear over defensive stats. This has a bit to do with the different content that is now available in old school RuneScape. However, I think it's just a general change in mentality. Everyone wants to be doing the most amount of damage because you get the most experience and it's the most efficient, which leads to generally armor that favors defensive stats being worth substantially less even if it's rare. Okay, next up here we have the Bandos Godsword. Currently the Bandos Godsword in old school RuneScape is worth around 12 mil, and back in 2010, which unfortunately was the earliest date available, it was worth 27 mil. That is a pretty notable difference, and keeping in mind that the Bandos Godsword before today's date was even cheaper. Like, the reason for this is the Bandos Godsword special attack in old school RuneScape originally costed 100% special attack, which was then reduced to 65% and further reduced to 50%, and that's where it is now. Before those updates, the Bandos Godsword was really cheap at like I think 5 or 6 mil or even cheaper. Now, a good part of the reason to why the Bandos Godsword is so cheap is possibly because of other spec weapons that have taken its place, mainly the Dragon Warhammer, and nobody really uses it as a main hand weapon anyway, only for speccing in PvM or PvP, and generally we just have a lot of diversity in weapons nowadays that makes the Bandos Godsword less used than it was in 2010. Alright, next up here we have the Dragon Axe. This one has a pretty jarring difference. In 2009, the Dragon Axe was worth around 2.5 mil. At today's price is around 100k, and that is taken into account that the Dragon Axe even has an item sync through the Infernal Axe, and yet the price is still under 100k. And the main reason I can guess at is the Dagonoth Kings are just farmed a lot more and in a much easier way. Items like the Toxic Trident make it really easy to farm Dagonoth Kings and just generally low level bosses overall. I think that in combination with the Archer's Ring, the Berserker's Ring, being worth a lot more than it was in 2009 makes it so a lot of people are farming them for those drops and not for the Dragon Hatchet or the Dragon Axe. So we just end up with a lot of Dragon Axes that nobody wants, and there we go, it's worth 100k. Okay, next up here we're having a look at the Raw Shark, and this one's actually pretty similar. Obviously it's not the exact same. Back in 2009 it was worth around 800-900 GP each. Currently it's worth 624, however over the last year the price has fluctuated from 400 up to 1,000. However, overall, raw sharks are worth less, and the main reason for that is having them on a bunch of different monsters drop table. Yes, they were removed from Zulrah, however, they're still a pretty common drop on a lot of PvM tables. Along with adding in the minnow fishing makes it just easier to obtain these items without even having a high fishing level. Okay, next up here we're having a look at the Banda's Chestplate. It's not a jarring difference by any means. Currently it's worth around 21 mil, and back in 2009 it was worth 13 mil. Now I think there are a couple explanations here. One very simple one is just inflation. Old school RuneScape gold is just worth less overall than it was in 2009. Maybe 13 mil 2009 gold would be worth around 20 mil 2019 gold. It's hard to say exactly which game is more inflated, like I said earlier. Another good explanation is just generally gear that gives strength bonuses is extremely valued in old school RuneScape now, which is the more modern mentality. The Banda's Chestplate is one of just a few items that actually give a strength bonus in the chest slot, making it pretty valuable, and the method of obtaining it is still quite challenging with the Godsword. Next up here we have the Archer's Ring, and this one is a pretty big difference. In 2009, the Archer's Ring was only worth around 677k. In 2019, the Archer's Ring currently is worth 6 mil, which means it's almost 10 times more expensive now than it was back in 2009. Now, if you asked any kind of semi-experienced player what they thought the most overpowered attack style would be, I think you'd get a lot of answers saying that it's ranged. We have the Toxic Blowpipe, we have the Twisted Bow, we have the Dragon Hunter Crossbow. Ranged has received a lot of love over the course of old school RuneScape and is generally viewed as one of the best attack styles for farming bosses, training. It really has a lot of good stuff. So that kind of makes the Archer's Ring extremely valuable, not to mention that you can imbue it, making it the best in slot ring for ranged. Generally, it's just a lot more valued in 2019 as opposed to 2009, and this is heavily reflected in its price. Next up here we have the Draconic Visage, which was worth around 17 mil in 2009 and currently is only worth around 7 mil. Now to begin with here, we have quite a few different dragons in old school RuneScape now. We have Vorkath, which is heavily farmed, we have Rune Dragons, we have Adamant Dragons, and we have Brutal Black Dragons, Brutal Red Dragons, and Brutal Blue Dragons. All of these creatures now drop the Draconic Visage, adding a lot of different ways that this item is added into the game, Vorkath being a major offender because it is farmed a lot for consistent gold. Now on top of that, we also have alternatives to the Dragonfire Shield with drops such as the Skeletal Visage as well as the Wyvern Visage, and just generally there are other options for defensive shield items. And that would be my best guess as to why the Draconic Visage is more than half the price that it was in 2009. Next up here we have Ranger Boots, which I think a lot of people can probably guess at why they are so expensive in the current game. Back in 2009, they were only worth around 6 mil, but in 2019, they're worth 36 mil. And there's a pretty simple explanation, and that is the Pegasian boots. In 2009, Ranger boots did not have nearly the use that they do in today's game. In old school RuneScape, you can combine the Pegasian crystal gotten from Cerberus, which is an exclusive boss to this game, with the Ranger boots and create the best in slot boots for ranging. This has created a huge demand for Ranger boots, and since they are a clue scroll item, they are already extremely rare, making the amount of actual Ranger boots in the game extremely low, boosting the price up to 30-40 mil currently. And in combination with how useful ranged is in the current game, I don't expect Ranger boots to get any cheaper anytime soon. Now next up here is the Elijan Spirit Shield. Back in 2009 it's worth around 400 mil, and in today's game it's worth around 550 mil. Now of course 120 mil is a pretty big difference, but this item's price fluctuates a lot. At the beginning of the year, the Elijan Spirit Shield was worth 700, 800 mil, now it's crashed down to less. This is one of the rare occurrences where the game updates haven't really messed with the method that you obtain the LE with. It's generally pretty similar between the two timelines. In my opinion, the only thing that's really fluctuating the price is the kind of meta revolving around the current game. Now there have been updates that have indirectly affected the Elijan Spirit Shield, so I think overall the prices have stayed kind of consistent between the two timelines. And last up here is the Abyssal Whip. Once again, the Abyssal Whip, while it does have a 900k difference, is actually generally pretty similar. While there are a few different ways of obtaining the Abyssal Whip in old school RuneScape, generally the main method of obtaining it is through killing Abyssal Demons. Now in old school RuneScape we do have an item sync for the Abyssal Whip through the Abyssal Tentacle, and it is widely used. That in conjunction with the rarity of the Abyssal Whip still being pretty high. I mean, a lot of people are doing Abyssal Demon tasks, and it is only a drop rate of 1 in 512, but that in combination with the item sync I think has given it a consistent 3 mil to 4 mil price tag for quite a while. I think the Abyssal Whip, the Banda's Chestplate, items like that are a very good example of a well-designed drop table, and we can really see it reflected in how consistent the prices are relatively over the last 10 years. Anyway guys, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you feel like some of my explanations were wrong, I would appreciate it if you left a comment down below and we can have a discussion about it. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.